This is awkward. Because I'm not gonna lie. It felt a bit like a made-for-TV film. That's not to say it was awful. That's not to say Spider-Man Far From Home was bad. It was just a bit underwhelming. That's a great way to put it. I have a way with words. So yeah, the film was underwhelming. I think that Mysterio as the villain worked in some ways, and in other ways it didn't. I think that the whole vibe of going to Europe and having a school trip wasn't really fleshed out from the start all the way through the film, even though that was the entire crux of the film. The fact that it was a moving boat, essentially, and all the shit was happening while they were all away. It didn't work in the way I thought it would work, and I ended up not really loving the film. I would say I preferred Spider-Man Homecoming to this. There were positives to this that were better than Homecoming, but overall I would say Homecoming's a better film than this in terms of how it's made, and the story and the plot. And I don't even love Spider-Man Homecoming that much, to be honest. It's pretty mid-tier in terms of all the Spider-Man films. In the MCU, it's right in the middle, you know, it's nothing special for me. And I thought this would be the film which really brings Spider-Man home for me, and to be like, this is the Spider-Man I want and I believe. And it just wasn't that. I'm gonna go spoilers here so that I can just speak openly about it. That way there's no shenanigans of, oh, you spoiled the film. This is spoilers, so you're mucked up if you're watching from here on out. I liked that they actually did Mysterio in a true Mysterio sense, and that all the trailers were actually just false, and he was the villain, and the way that he was the villain was exactly how it is in the comics, and it's not that they didn't go the magical power route, which I think could have been cool in and of itself. It could have been a cool way that they could have done it, and I think it could have worked. I might make a video of how I feel they could have made this film more cohesive and better story-wise if they'd gone a magical route with him, and with the elementals overall, because it ended up just being an absolute farce. We got the Mysterio that is actually just looking for fame, and he's looking for notoriety, and I think Jake Gyllenhaal played that character very well. As I said, I think with what they did with the character, it was good, and I was fine with it. I just feel maybe it would have been interesting to see them go down the magic route and have another magical character involved in the MCU other than Thor and Doctor Strange. And Scarlet Witch, I guess. It just would have built that side of the MCU out a bit more, and he could have actually been a hero in some ways, but maybe had his own vested interests at heart through the film, and maybe he wouldn't have actually been the bad guy of the film. There would have been someone else. I'll talk about that later, but I see why Jake Gyllenhaal took the role now, because it was a one and done. Take from that what you will, but yeah, he's a very independent film type guy now. He likes the stories. He likes picking things that he wants to make. So when he came and took this on, I was surprised, and as soon as he did, I thought to myself, he's probably gonna die in this one. I'll put it blankly and plainly, and that's the case. I mean, some of the most exciting things were his visual scenes where he was puffing up and flying away and doing all that type of stuff with the Illuminati signs, and the way that was with all drones and shenanigans like that. It was interesting. But the most exciting part of the film for me was actually the two end credit scenes. One of them specifically. One of the most interesting parts with the end credit scenes. Maybe not the most exciting, because one of them, if you don't know, was basically J. Jonah Jameson popping up on screen as J.K. Simmons, or J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. It was mind-boggling. I think a lot of people in the theatre got up and left. I don't know why. It's been 10 years, you buffoons. Like, sit down. You know there are post-credit scenes. People got up after the first one. I was like, guys, come on, there's going to be two, all right? So the first one was that, and basically Peter Parker's identity is out there now for everyone to know, and that is going to be an interesting thing going forward in the MCU, but I feel that they maybe shouldn't have done it, because part of what makes Spider-Man unique in this world is that no one knows his secret identity. And now if everyone does, it sort of doesn't matter anymore, you know? Takes away that level of... There's a risk with him if people know his identity, but now everyone knows his identity, so everyone knows who he knows, and it's just dangerous for everyone now, whereas there were risky elements before. Which is... Again, it's a different take for the third one that they're going to make, which is fine, but the second post-credit scene is the one I'm not really having. Interesting nonetheless. It turns out Nick Fury wasn't actually Nick Fury in this film at all, and it was one of the Skrulls from Captain Marvel. Why not, I guess? That's the question that would be put forward there. Why not? I'm telling you why not. Just don't do it. I have a feeling with the MCU at this point that we've seen the golden years, we've seen the golden age of comic book films over the past 15 years, and I have a worry that starting with this film there will be a steady decline in these types of films, and it's not something I want to see because I love these characters and I grew up with these characters and I want these films to do very, very well. But this was basically the perfect setup film going forward in the MCU. It was a perfect way to close off Phase 3 with Spider-Man. I think, yeah. And I just don't feel that it worked as well as I wished it had. I mean, Tom Holland as Spider-Man is great. I think he really brings himself to the role. I actually preferred Zendaya much more in this film than in the last one. I absolutely hated her in Homecoming, but I preferred her in this. I don't know why. The Jacob guy, I dislike him so much. He's such an unlikable character for some reason. In the last one, I preferred him way more. And in this one, he just got under your nerves. And I feel everyone did feel that. Everyone was literally like, I don't like this guy for some reason, and I don't know why, which is odd. There was a bloody 30-year-old Asian guy just popping up in school. They didn't really explain... They did explain the blip, or Thanos snapping, let's just call it that. But I think they mucked up in continuity inside the film in the first, like, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which is shocking for Marvel. They don't do this type of stuff. But apparently, with both the Spider-Man films so far, they've had problems with time jumps and problems with understanding when things happened and how things happen. And I think they mucked up in the first 10 minutes on the plane, 15 minutes there, with who blipped and who didn't blip and how the blipping worked, because it was Captain Exposition instead of Captain America for the first, like, 30 minutes of this film. There was so much shit going on. The idea of the multiverse and that type of stuff was a cool concept. Unfortunately, none of it was real. It was all just a farce from Mysterio and his team, because he did have a team. He was a previous employee of Tony Stark, and now Tony Stark's dead. Spider-Man got these glasses that basically gave him all access to all of Tony's shit. Sort of mucks up, gives them to Mysterio, which is what Mysterio really wanted, and then he basically has control of he has control of all of. Wow, there you go. Of all of Stark Industries tech, which is not a good thing for a villain to have. But then at the same time, it makes you question, why would you give it to a 17-year-old, 16-year-old kid? Maybe not the best idea. Nick Fury, I feel, is also a bit of a wish-washed character at this point. I think it started with Captain Marvel, and it has carried on into this film in the way he was presented. Now, they got away with it because at the end of it, he turned out to be a Skrull, and the real Nick Fury was, I think, off in space. I would hope to believe starting up Sword. The problem is, the scene we did have of Nick Fury was like a lax, relaxed type of Nick Fury that I don't like. I like my Nick Fury brooding. That's how I like my Nick Fury. That's how I like my Sam Jackson. I didn't like Nick Fury in Captain Marvel. Not at all. I like Nick Fury in Iron Man 1. There's a difference there. But yeah, odd things in this film. As I said, some things were good, some things were bad. The CGI was relatively good most of the time. There were problems with it. As I said, the pacing was really, really awful. It's probably one of the worst paced MCU films ever. Honestly, that's a small thing for some people, but for me, editing and pacing are very, very important, and the things I really stick to and notice. I really feel that they could have paced this film so much better, and I think it was a story they were trying to tell which didn't help with the pacing of the film itself. So I think I've laid how I feel about the film out there, so you shouldn't be surprised when I'd say if I would rate this film, which I don't really do anymore, but I feel if I do very few film reviews, I should give a rating. I would give the film I'll give it a frugal 5.5 out of 10. It really wasn't very good. Probably in my bottom 5 MCU films. Yeah, that's really, really bad. But what would you give it out of 10? That's the important thing here. Start a conversation. Who knows? We might have an argument. Anyway, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel down there. If you didn't, then Spider-Man himself will come after you, alright? Just to be clear, I do like Spider-Man. I've liked him for years. I love the animated show, alright? But this was just not for me. Not for me. But he'll come after you anyway, and you don't want that, you already know, so just subscribe anyway to avoid that. I've been Arranged with a Comic. You've been great, I'll see you next time. Skadoosh.